Hi friends, welcome to the channel. So this is going to be my first video where I'm going to explain to you how you can set up your routine for building muscle. I've gained a solid understanding of exercise science through both education and professional experiences. And when it comes to currently, I'm in my master's degree program for exercise physiology, and I don't ever claim to know all the answers to everything. Everything that I share here with you in this video is just personal experiences that have helped me, friends, family, and the clients that I've worked with. So hopefully you can find something that is useful to you and that you can start applying to your personal routine if you're trying to build a little bit more muscle. When it comes to this, we're going to break it down into three main categories, and that is going to be training, recovery, and diets. So those three variables are something that's super critical, and you're going to also notice that they are very interrelated and they kind of build off of one another, especially whenever we're trying to optimize building muscle with our routines. When it comes to training, just think that is the process of which you are going to be tearing down the muscle. It could be your workouts or even just any sort of activity that you do that is substantial enough to cause a little bit of muscle tissue damage. And that's really going to tell the body and stimulate it to really want to grow. The second one was recovery. Think of recovery as giving your body the time and ability to use the sparing energy that it has within itself to actually build and repair that broken down tissue from your training. Number three was diet. Think of diet as a way for you to actually nourish your body, give your body the energy and the nutrients that it needs in order to actually build and recover from that training that you did. As I said before, if you notice, they are very interrelated and they really build off of one another. So now we're going to kind of break down all three of those variables into different categories. And when it comes to training, that is going to be the first one we're going to break down. Training, it's not really a one size fits all. And sure, some of you may already know that. It's important to know that the training program that you do, you start with the number of available days that you have for yourself. So if you were to have 2 days to work out or even 3 days every single week, you wouldn't want to pick a program like push-pull legs because you're only going to be hitting one session of those push-pull and legs every single week. However, once you figure out that training program that does work for you, so if you have 3 days per week, I definitely recommend doing something like a full body split. You're going to have to make sure that that program actually sticks with one primary goal. That one primary goal that each and every training program must have, it's going to achieve muscular damage and muscular fatigue. Those are super important whenever it comes to any training program because that's going to give your body the stimulus or the signal to actually start building and repairing tissue. When it comes to muscular damage, just think that is giving your body the signals to actually want to start growing muscle. It needs to repair, it needs to nourish, it needs time to rest. When it comes to muscular fatigue, just think that is signaling to the body that one, the muscle has gotten enough use and there's a lot of time under tension. Once you decide that training program that's going to work for you, maybe you decided what splits you're going to follow, you need to have some exercises to be paired up with it. When it comes to your exercises, they really are broken down into two really big categories, and that's going to be your compound and isolation movements. Compound movements are definitely should be put as the priority over isolation because compounds are going to be a better bang for your buck. When it comes to compound movements, really what it is multiple joints, multiple muscles being used at the same time to accomplish one specific exercise. So just really think there's a couple different ones. So you have lunges, you have deadlifts, you have squats, you have bench presses, and you have overhead pressing, stuff like that. You're using multiple joints and multiple muscles to achieve and execute one single exercise. Those exercises typically come first. The reason why is because they are very demanding and they're going to cause the most amount of muscular damage, especially because we can go a lot heavier on them. However, a second group of exercises like isolations, they are really great for adding additional volume to muscle groups. It's something that you kind of add towards the end of your workouts, or you can kind of sometimes have them on the other side of compound movements, just depending upon what you're doing it for. And whenever you're thinking about isolation movements, just think those right there are going to be things like bicep curls, tricep pushdowns, leg extensions, leg curls, or even doing something like a lateral raise. You're using a specific muscle group in a specific joint at a specific angle for one thing. Really don't overthink your exercise selection whenever you go to pick them between your compounds and isolations. Just think prioritize the compound movements for your major muscle groups that you're trying to hit. Isolations really just help you add additional volume over time. Whenever it comes to a beginner workout, typically it's going to consist of mainly compound movements. Intermediate will have just a little bit of isolation, and then advanced training definitely is going to be supersetting compound movements and then also supersetting isolation movements probably later on in the workout. Just because you're getting so more advanced, your body requires a little bit more stimulus, requiring a little bit more volume. And speaking of volume, when it comes to the number of sessions that you're going to hit every single week, you really should be hitting about 2 to 3 sessions per per muscle group throughout the entire week. And when it comes to volume, how many reps and how many sets should you be doing? 8 to 12 is a really good rep range. It's going to allow you to really hit that moderate to heavier threshold, so more of a, let's say, 70 to 85% of your 1RM maxes for your compound movements, really stimulating the muscle and getting plenty of time under tension during an 8 to 12 rep range. When it comes to an 8 to 12 rep range, typically it's going to take you about 30 to, let's say, 60 seconds to complete, and that's going to be absolutely substantial and adequate enough to actually really stimulate the body to grow a little bit more muscle. So now that we've kind of figured out the training split, what kind of training program you should be following, kind of how much sets and reps you should be really focusing on, how many sessions. Whenever it comes to progress, how do we progress? When it comes to progression, there's 3 ways to do it. One thing we've already talked about, which is volume. Second is going to be frequency. And then third is going to be the intensity. When it comes to frequency, just think that is the number of times you're going to work out every single week or day or even month. And if you were to be working out 3 times every single week and then you bumped it up to 4, that's going to be some sort of progressive overload that's going to overload the body just a little bit more, getting it a little bit more uncomfortable, and you're going to see a little bit more gains over time the longer you stick with it. The second one was volume. We've already slightly touched on this when it comes to the reps. Whenever it comes to the reps, 8 to 12 is a really good rep range. However, whenever it comes to progressing it, just think adding more sets, maybe even adding more reps whenever it comes to a specific weight. So if you were to be doing the same weight, let's say for 8 or 10 reps, and you repeatedly did that for an entire month, how you would progress that is just simply adding an extra additional set. So instead of doing 2 sets, you would be doing 3. And if you wanted to add in more volume relating to your reps, all you would do is bump those reps up from, let's say, 8 or 10 to 10 or 12. And if you were to just stick with that rep count, you would want to be using the same weight, just doing more reps with it, really achieving that muscular fatigue and getting that muscular damage, the 2 primary goals of your training program. And then the last one is intensity. Really, intensity, just think the amount of effort that you're putting into every set, every rep that you're doing. When it comes to intensity, typically the best way to progress is adding in between 2.5 to 5 pounds. That typically seems to be a pretty gold standard for some. Some people even add up to 10 pounds. However, just think that it should be really relative to the amount of weight that you're already putting on the bar or grabbing in your hands when it comes to your dumbbells or cables. If you really want to get scientific with it, when it comes to upper body, you could add about 5 to 10% more weight every single time you progress with intensity. And then when it comes to lower body, you could actually add anywhere between 10 and 20%. When it comes to your upper and lower body, if you were to add up to 10 for your upper body and then let's say 20% for your lower body, that is going to be a pretty substantial increase depending upon the amount of weight that you're already pushing. The higher that your intensity goes and the quicker that you increase it, really the higher chances are for injury. I definitely recommend being more gradual with your changes, sticking with closer to 5 or even 10%. Being more gradual with your bumps in intensity is definitely recommended because the higher that you bump your intensity, the quicker that you bump it up, the higher risk it is for injury because the sooner you're going to hit that muscular fatigue and the closer you're getting to your 100% repetition max. All right, so now when training is kind of behind us here, we kind of laid the foundation for the split, the type of training, how we can kind of progress a little bit to get yourself started with your new routine. Let's talk about recovery. Recovery is super, super important. Recovery can kind of be set in a couple different spots. That could be taking a rest day or even prioritizing sleep. For this video, we're going to mainly talk about sleep. The reason why we're going to talk about sleep is because rest days are kind of assumed. They're something that we should be building in and prioritizing, having down days. Sleep, though, it's something we should really dial into, and it's more routine based. So when it comes to sleep, just think muscle is grown in the sheets. The hormones that are responsible for muscle tissue building and muscle tissue repair really peak when after a really good night's rest, and they do the opposite when we don't get a good night's rest. They kind of dip down a little bit. Those 2 hormones are mainly testosterone and human growth hormone, or HGH. There's a ton of other hormones that are involved, but those are just the 2 primary ones. When it comes to the amount of sleep that you should be getting, think about 7 to 9 hours. That's typically a really gold standard for how much sleep you should get. Some people need a little more, closer to 9. Some people need a little less. And not only is it the amount of time that you're spending in sleep, it's also about the consistency of when you're going to sleep. The more consistent that you can get with your sleep, the higher the quality of sleep you're going to get. So now we have an understanding of really recovery and how we can build sleep into our routine. The last one here is going to be dialing in your diet. That was the 3rd variable. When it comes to dialing in your diet, we're really just trying to look for adequate calories, adequate macronutrients, and adequate micronutrients. When it comes to the field of nutrition, it can definitely get highly complex, and everybody really needs a personalized program and finding something that works for them. To really find a really personalized program, it's important to work with a professional that's really experienced in the world of nutrition, like a dietitian. But coming from my perspective as a certified nutrition coach, not a dietitian, and some general recommendations are really prioritizing protein, eating enough carbohydrates to make sure your workouts are fueled, and then when it comes to fats, really just let them kind of fall into place where they need to be. However, limiting the amount of saturated fats you get is super important, and then also prioritizing unsaturated fats can really be beneficial for overall health and well-being. Whenever you're talking about protein, the amount of protein that you should be getting is something like 1 gram per pound of lean body mass. Can be super beneficial and really helps you dial in your diet. How you would figure out the amount of lean body mass that you have, all you would do is just take your body weight and your body fat percentage, and then that difference is basically your lean body mass tissue. So let's say that you were a 200-pound person and you were to have, let's say, 10% body fat. That would leave you with 180 pounds of lean body mass, and you would need about 1 gram per pound of lean body mass. However, if you're somebody that doesn't really have access to ways to measure your body composition, then doing something simple as 1 gram or even 1.2 grams per pound of body weight is a really good recommendation and definitely going to be adequate for majority of individuals. Moving on to other focus areas to focus on when it comes to your diet, water. Water is absolutely critical. When it comes to water, your muscles are over 75% water. So the better that you're hydrated, the better chances are that your routine in terms of staying hydrated is going to be more substantial and optimal for building and repairing your muscle. Calories are just how we measure energy units going into the body. Being in that slight deficit of somebody that's overweight or obese, your body's going to have plenty of energy within itself to actually fuel the process of building and repairing muscle, even while you lose a little weight. If you're somebody that's a little bit more lean, meaning your body fat percentage is pretty low, then you should probably really prioritize calorie consumption as much as possible, and maybe even bumping it up a little bit higher than what your maintenance is. A good recommendation for the amount of calories that you should add is about 100 to 300 calories per day. When it comes to that 100 to 300 calories, it's really going to slowly inch that weight up, and it's going to minimize the amount of fat that you gain on your body while also prioritizing building and repairing new muscle tissue. So there you have it. Those are the three main variables. So you have training, you have recovery, and you also have diet. We kind of figured out how we can build those three things into our routine to really optimally build muscle. It is a lot of information, but I just want to give you 5 takeaways to help you really narrow down and maybe even make a list of things that you can personally prioritize and just get started instantly as soon as you walk away. One of those 5 takeaways is develop a training program that works for you, not against you. You should always start with the number of days that you personally have available to work out every single week to decide what type of split or program that you're going to follow for yourself. Number 2, once you figure out the number of days you have in your training split, it's time for you to select some exercises and make sure that those exercises are muscle building. Prioritize the compound movements over isolation. Remember, isolation just really helps you add that additional volume the deeper and longer that you've been training, and aim for about 2 to 3 sessions per week to stimulate each muscle group. Number 3, decide how many sets and reps that you're going to be doing of those muscle building exercises. It's important to make sure we start off with something a little bit smaller, something that gets you introduced to the program. Whenever it comes to the sets and reps, just think for your sets, the more advanced that you are, the more sets you're going to have to do. When it comes to your reps, that's a really easy way to add a little bit more progression into your workouts. If you're going to increase the number of reps that you're doing, do it with the same number of weight and just slowly reach a higher number, increasing the amount of time under tension your muscle can experience. Number 4, whenever it comes to prioritizing sleep, it's not only about the time that you spend in the sheets, it's about the consistency of when you're going to bed. Whenever you're going for time, think 7 to 9 hours, depending upon how your body reacts to sleep, how efficient you are. When it comes to consistency, try to go within the same hour. And when it comes to the last one, remember, your diet should be dialed in. Your diet is really the foundation of recovery and whenever it comes to your training sessions. Your diet not only fuels your training, but it also aids and gives your body the energy that it needs during your downtime of recovery. I really hope that this video was informative in any way, whether that's helping you get started with developing a routine or you learned something new about building a routine for building muscle. Either way, this right here is my latest video. Definitely feel free to check it out. My name is Dakota, and until next time, take care.